How we doing, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. I am your host, Richie, here in window number 2. Window number 1, my guy, Mr. Mike Zappy, San Antonio, Texas. My guy making a return, Mr. Corey Rain. Good to see you here, friend. Haven't seen you here in a little while.
My presence still looms large. Just kidding.
And just to explain why the cameras are off, Mr. Zappy is actually in his vehicle. As far as Corey and I go, it's called depression. We watch the New York Yankees, and that's why our cameras are off. Amidst a flood of tears, in my case, just a lot of tears.
This is the virtual brown paper bag.
Yes, this is the brown paper bag of the sports podcast. Early August, kind of like that tweener time of the year just before football starts. I mean, yes, I am excited about football season coming back. I'm also excited about this severe punishment that I continue to put myself through to come to a seasonal close. That called being a New York Yankees fan. This inept offense is just very frustrating. You hit 3 home runs tonight and produced 3 runs. Early on, potential triple.
Big play in the game. That play, and then Sevy not being able to make a good pitch to Diaz.
Yeah, it's like you take a couple of steps forward, and then you take about 2 or 3, maybe 5 backwards. Yeah. That has essentially been the Yankees season.
But I feel like they're competing, and they still have a chance to win this series against Houston.
Oddly enough, Corey, I do tend to agree. I said this to you off air earlier. I feel like since the addition of Sean Casey, the bats are actually a little better. What I mean by that is not that we're producing more runs. That is solely attributed to whether or not Mr. Judge is in the lineup. I'm talking more about Sean Casey, his influence on having these guys take a few more pitches and just have better at-bats. Because one thing I noticed tonight, they were hitting the ball a lot harder tonight. Unfortunately, some tough breaks. But, you know, when Severino is 4 in the hole early, it's hard to give yourself a chance.
His last few starts have put us in that hole, and then with the offense we have, it feels like it's 15 runs down, you know?
Oh, absolutely. But, you know, tomorrow, marquee matchup, Nestor Cortez on the bump against newly acquired Justin Verlander. He only spent half a season with the New York Mets.
How about this for how insane that all is? If you would have went preseason and said, okay, by the end of the year, the Mets are going to trade Scherzer and Verlander, and they're going to be on the 2 Texas teams, would you have taken that bet?
Absolutely not. And then, you know, incumbent ace Jacob deGrom goes to Zappy's team in Arlington, has Tommy John surgery, and now he's reunited with Max eventually when they both pitch together. No, nobody saw any of this happening.
Do you think that Houston did that to counter the Rangers? They had to have, obviously.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, the Texas Rangers, and I've said this to Zappy on many a show, the Texas Rangers are a couple of years ahead of their trajectory. You know,
I mean, they're starting to get pitching now, and that's the thing. But, you know, obviously Scherzer is no spring chicken, so they're hoping for a quick fix on him.
Well, the funny thing is, though, about Texas is we actually had the best starting rotation in baseball. What was screwing us was our bullpen. But now with the additions of Max Scherzer and Jordan Montgomery, it allowed them to put starters into the relief position. And now we are strong at every level.
The dominance of your rotation dictates the bullpen.
Absolutely.
Well, there was many games where we had leads and we take out the starter and it's the 6th or 7th inning, and our bullpen was giving up the leads, and it happened day in and day out. It happened most recently against the Astros when we had a 9-6 lead in the 8th inning, and then Chapman comes in and gives up a 3-run blast to tie the game. And that it was in that moment where it was like, look, if you want to win this division, you're going to have to improve the starting rotation if you're not going to improve the bullpen. That way, you can put the guys like a Martin Perez and an Andrew Heaney down
Yeah.
where they can come in on relief situation, especially if your starting pitcher's having a bad first 2 innings.
When your pen is struggling, it's all about giving them less outs to have to.
Yeah, I think that one of the issue is that teams just were not giving up elite relievers like that, man. So to try and improve it was, I don't know.
Zappy, I want to ask you this. We're talking about struggling pens. And I'm talking about a good pen. Yankees still own the best bullpen ERA in the bigs. If you're Aaron Boone, being that this has kind of been a topsy-turvy year, more so going into next year in terms of a new philosophy, would you consider taking a page out of Kevin Cash's book and going about starters, similarly to how bullpen guys have done that to a very high success level for the Tampa Bay Rays? Because my frustration, Zap, over the course of the last month or so, is it seems like when the bullpen actually gets into the game's already out of reach. And then you compound the problem with the lack of offense. So I guess from an outsider's opinion, because you're not a Yankee fan, you're not emotionally attached to this, would you consider going that route on certain days of the week for the New York Yankees, as opposed to continuing to march out starters that are struggling, hence Luis Severino? And to be fair, before even his troubles off the field, you could also make that same case for a Domingo Germán. Yes, he pitched the perfect game. Outside of that, he's been very inconsistent.
He's been up and down. He's been had highs and lows for sure.
Absolutely, and now is a not just a career low, but also a personal low. He's going to get help for his alcoholism. CC Sabathia battled something similar to that. He came up on top. But not to get too away from the question, Zap, if you're Aaron Boone, how would you approach this? And not just Aaron Boone. I'm talking about teams in general that struggle with the starters but have a very nice bullpen. Zappy, you still with us?
I think we lost him, man.
I think we lost him. And he was like, the hell with your question. Corey, I'll pitch it to you.
Okay. So how many times a week are you talking about an opener here? Just depending on.
I'm talking more like 2 days a week, because I feel that, when things are projected to be right, a Garrett Cole, a Carlos Rodon, a Nestor Cortez are pretty damn good.
Yes.
I think you could bring in a guy like, I don't think Severino's going to be a Yankee next year, but let's just play a hypothetical game. A guy like a Severino or a guy like a Domingo Germán, I personally believe their biggest strength would be to come out of the pen.
I mean, yeah. And Severino, obviously, he would throw 101 coming out of the pen. Like, it would be. Yeah, there's something to be said for that. If you have multiple starters struggling, something to be said. I wouldn't even mind doing it once a week if they had 4 good starters. But the issue is on those games, I think they usually use a bulk guy after the opener. So they'd have to have a bulk pitcher to go with that.
I just think most definitely a tragic scenario when you have a Garrett Cole who leads Major League Baseball in innings pitched, but yet, they've been grasping at straws to have any kind of continuity after their ace.
Yep. Only Clark Schmidt, which I can't believe I'm even saying that, but he's been really good.
Well, I think it's like practice makes perfect. Clark Schmidt has been given an expanded role, and I do tend to believe that he has maximized the opportunity. I actually think that he's done rather well with that.
Yeah, and he's an important piece because, obviously he's not an ace, but he's a middle of the rotation, back end rotation guy, and he's important. He's actually been consistent.
No, most definitely. And Zappy was definitely pulling for us tonight for obvious reasons. His
Sure.
They're in a legitimate playoff chase with that team from Houston. I said it off air. I told you my honest, humble opinion. I believe the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros are on a collision course for a potential ALCS, an all-Texas ALCS.
I was going to ask if you thought who won the division mattered, but I think it does because you want that home field.
No question. You definitely want the home field. And there's no guarantee that they play in the ALCS because given the extra wild cards, there is that possibility that they could cross paths in the actual
I think the AL East will have something to say about that in one way or another.
Yeah, Baltimore has kind of made a liar out of me. I thought at some time they were going to cool down to the point where, not necessarily calling them pretenders, but that I just wasn't sure if this was going to sustain. Similar to the Texas Rangers, they're here now, and they have to be accounted for. Do
you think their lack of experience winning, do you think it would be a letdown if they lost the division and still made the playoffs, or are they just happy to be in the playoffs and either way?
It's always a letdown whenever you don't go further than you feel you could. But having said that, I believe that the Orioles are in a position where they're going to be good for a while. So I don't think that this is going to be a one-off. I think that they're going to be a frequent visitor to the playoffs. And to be frank with you, I wouldn't call it a full-on rebuild in our case, but I do believe that the New York Yankees are going to have to take a couple of steps back before they completely go forward again. And, when you have a centerpiece like an Aaron Judge, I don't think it's all bad because I say to myself, we're a few games over 500. Judge missed the better part of 2 months. If that dude doesn't miss 2 months, we're in the playoffs, and I would say that we're pushing a little closer to Tampa and Baltimore. Now,
even if he misses a month, they're in better shape.
Absolutely. And while I'm not going to absolve all the other Yankee issues in that lineup, I do think it goes without saying that Aaron Judge, and I'm actually going to quote your post from about a week or so ago, he is the most valuable.
Yeah.
Aaron Judge is the most valuable. Shohei will get the award this year, well-deserved.
Yeah, look, man. And people tried to bait me into that conversation saying, oh, who's more valuable? I didn't say nothing. They knew who I was referring to. But
yeah, Aaron Judge, in my genuine opinion, and I'm not saying it because I'm a Yankee fan, I think his presence and his absence affect his ball club more than any other player in Major League Baseball, and that's including Ronald Acuna Jr., who is phenomenal, as well as Shohei Ohtani.
Great.
We've seen the Atlanta Braves win a division title with Acuna missing all kinds of time. We've seen the Los Angeles Angels essentially kind of be barely above the water with Shohei doing all the great things that he does.
Oh, and they also had a guy named Trout.
Future Hall of Fame Mike Trout as well. And yes, he in his own right has dealt with the injury bug. Interesting fact, because I was kind of getting into a bit of an argument on a vintage baseball post. And, I feel that certain people were putting Mike Trout at like this God level, almost like a Ken Griffey Jr. And I said, wait a minute. Thurman Munson, the captain whose passing was honored by the Yankees this past week.
Yep, a couple of days ago, August 2nd.
That's correct.
I always remember August 2nd, man. That's like ingrained in my brain.
No, absolutely. I have a cousin who has that birthday, as well as resident member of the show, our boy Brett. And obviously, Thurman Munson's passing, before my time. But my father's hero, in my podcast room, I actually have a picture of Thurman with my dad's picture inside it as well. What I do want to say about Thurman is prior to his death, based on his numbers, he was actually closer to 3,000 hits than Mike Trout was given the same amount of years of service in Major League Baseball. So,
I think he should be in the Hall of Fame, Munson. I wholeheartedly think he should.
I feel that death should never be a reason to not make it if it's cut short, because I think you have to gauge it on what level of performance and how many years of service has he been doing it at that level, especially a demanding position like catcher.
Yeah, and when was he a rookie? 1970, maybe?
I believe so. I could look that up before we sign out of here, but he played 11 years.
Okay, so maybe 69 was 69 was probably.
So when I look at it, and I'm not picking on Mike Trout, I'm just making an analogy and an example that sometimes things are not always the way that they're pressed to be, because
I think their trajectory is going the same route though, Griffey and Trout.
Very much so, because when Griff signed with the Cincinnati Reds, he fell victim to the injury bug, unfortunately.
He played hard, man. He went all out all the time. That's all he knew.
Yeah, he always played hard. I mean, similar to our man Judge, catching that injury in Los Angeles. Going to change the gears a little, keep it on baseball.
Sure.
3 big trades. Savall from the Cleveland Guardians to Tampa Bay. We mentioned briefly Max Scherzer joining the Texas Rangers. He had a quality start after a rough beginning of the game. Justin Verlander will have his first start with Houston of this year. Obviously, he has many a start that helps shape out his future Hall of Fame career. In your opinion, of the 3, which is going to be the most impactful for these 3 teams chasing a World Series this year?
Easily Verlander, in my opinion.
All right.
I thought the Astros missed him.
Oh, yeah, you make a legitimate point. I mean, you're talking about the reigning American League Cy Young Award winner last year who changed the dresses,
Yep. I think his presence was missing, just like when Altuve was hurt, his presence was missing,
Yeah, it's remarkable that not only can you get a talent like that at this juncture of the year, but that you could get the guys that overpaid him to take the brunt of that contract. Yeah. I mean, I get it. Uncle Stevie is a billionaire, and it's a beautiful thing that you're playing in a different lane when it comes to giving money. But my God, I mean, when you look at the players that the Mets are paying this year, whether it be Max Scherzer, whether it be Justin Verlander, not to be funny, but they still got the Bobby Bonilla money floating out there.
I think they're still paying Robinson Cano.
Robinson Cano is also getting paid. Escobar is also getting paid. Welcome back, Zappy. When I think about just the money that the New York Mets have flung out, and don't get me wrong, I think they're going to get a hell of a talent in Acuna's younger brother.
Yeah, they got a lot of prospects, and you're basically paying for prospects at this point.
Absolutely. But my God, when you think about the money in that direction, you have to say, there's got to be an enormous amount of pressure on the kids that are getting traded for a Hall of Famer like that, because if it don't work out, that's a very expensive, investment in terms of what you think that kid could be, because we know what you traded. You traded a Hall of Famer, 2 of them actually.
2 of them, exactly.
3 of them, really, when they let one walk.
Oh, DeGrom.
Yeah.
You put DeGrom Hall of Fame?
Absolutely, I think DeGrom is a Hall of Famer.
I feel that he has to get some healthy years on the tail end, possibly, as you suggested, as a setup man or possibly a closer. I think DeGrom has to do that for a little bit to solidify Hall of Fame candidacy, because I think the time missed has definitely derailed.
Yeah. Even though he's had incredible peak moments like Sandy Koufax type shit.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, dude, I kind of get a taste of what it was like being a Mets fan during those years. when DeGrom pitches and gets no run support, because Garrett Cole has suffered from that this year.
Yeah, but remember also, DeGrom is only 35. He's a guy that's a 2-time Cy Young winner, I believe it is. You know,
Yep.
he's been in the All-Star multiple times. Would have been an All-Star selection again this year. Would have been other times. I mean, he's been a first-team All-Baseball player twice or 3 times. Like, what works in DeGrom's advantage is he still has at least 7 to 10 solid years, which, quite frankly, being a closer would solidify his nomination.
Reduced to having. It's going to be a tale of 2 careers if he succeeds.
Yeah. I don't think he'll be able to have the longevity as a starter. So
that's why I think Zappy's on par with his suggestion of putting DeGrom in the pen, because when you have that kind of electric stuff, but when you can basically spread it out to only face, say, 6 batters, max 3 batters usually, it can definitely change the course of how long you can stick around. I mean, Christ, Mariano Rivera started off as a starter, and he failed miserably. He went on to become the greatest closer in the history of Major League Baseball. So I definitely think Jacob deGrom is potentially going to be capable of doing this. I mean, look at a guy like a Dave Righetti.
Yep.
Dave Righetti threw a no-hitter on the 4th of July against the Boston Red Sox early in his career, and later he got reduced to being a closer.
And he was the Yankee saves leader for a while until Rivera broke it.
That is correct. Yes, indeed. That's
40 years ago, July 4th this year.
Unbelievable. And, speaking of closers, we were just talking about the Mets. They just sent David Robertson to the team that Zappy's guys are playing tonight, the Miami Marlins. He had quite a season in the absence of Edwin Diaz, but that's actually one of the few trades that I co-signed for the Mets. I actually do also agree with them moving on from Max Scherzer. I do believe that's the right move, but I'm sorry. I think they moved on a little too quick from Verlander, given how much they invested in him. That's my personal opinion.
Yep.
When you're going to overpay him that much, at that point, you got to kind of fall on the sword and say, all right. I get it.
Yeah.
They should have got more, is what I'm saying. If Verlander, I think part of the influence of that is Verlander's age, but I'm like, you're still paying him. It's like the Houston Astros are making asses out of the Mets for this situation. It's like, we let him go, you overpaid him, you traded him to us, and we're paying him a fraction of what we would have had to pay him if we would have done what you did.
Right, and he still can be a key cog in big games. Like, I don't care how old he is.
It's absurd. It's truly absurd. And then you look at a guy like Max. He's getting checks right now from 3 different baseball clubs.
Yeah. I think the Nationals are still covering something.
Friggin' absurd. Zappy, obviously you're disappointed that the Yanks didn't help out your Texas Rangers. But moving forward in the next few weeks, what are you looking for and what are you expecting from your club? Obviously, your club is incredibly relevant for the first time in about a decade when you guys went to back-to-back.
Hey. 2015 was the last time we won the division. Pump the brakes there.
I'm sorry, we're Yankee fans. Winning divisions, we usually don't hang stuff up for those.
Yeah, well, you're hanging up on whatever you're hanging up. I will say this. The Rangers' schedule for the remainder of the season is not nearly as bad as what the Astros have to go through to finish off the year. So the Rangers kind of have it. They control their destiny. Let's put it that way. They control their destiny. It's not going to be, they're not winning this division by more than 3 games if they win this division. This division is going to come down to the final week where Houston travels to Arizona the final week. And I want to say we play, who the hell do we play? I think it's Seattle to close out the year.
Is that out?
In Seattle. So that's what's going to be an interesting one, because if you put their records side by side together, the Astros actually have a better division record, and it may very well come down to that final week where we're going to have to win those games in order to obviously win the Division One. But
is that in Seattle or in Texas?
It's in Seattle.
Oh wow, that's a tough trip.
It's in Seattle, so but the Astros have played 7 more division games than us, so there's that caveat to the whole situation. Where Houston has been beating up on other teams. They've had all their easy games. We've had all our hard games. So now Houston has to go through the ringer a little bit as well. It's going to
Yeah,
come down to the end.
they still played us a couple, maybe 7, not 7, but 5 more times.
Yeah, you guys still have one more series after these last 2 games against them. What I like about the whole situation with Texas, though, is, again, our pitching rotation was already strong. It was leading the majors in a lot of statistical categories. We're now adding Jordan Montgomery as well as Max Scherzer solidifies our rotation to go along with the #1 hitting offense in all of baseball, which that goes a long way, because one thing with Texas last year was we were putting up 12 runs a game, but averaging or allowing 14, so it was just like,
baseball.
Yeah. So now we have that team, and quite frankly, I believe the AL is coming down to the Astros and the Rangers and the ALCS. It's set up that way right now with the current standings. It looks like it's going to happen that way, where Texas, I fully believe that whoever they're playing in the first round or in the first series will win it and be playing Houston in the ALCS. They're the 2 stronger teams right now in the American League to go with Baltimore, but Baltimore, it's going to be their youth that I think will get them at the end.
I still
Tampa,
wouldn't sleep on
they
them,
still got to get healthy, but now Houston, they're getting healthy at the right time. They needed to make that Verlander trade in order for them to keep up with Texas. They made it. They're getting healthier, so it's going to come down to that final week for the AL West, and I don't want to say that's going to be for #1 in the AL, but I mean Texas is only a few games, 3.5 games back, I believe, of Baltimore.
Yep. Does it matter to you if they win the division or if they don't win the division? And obviously they're still in.
I would rather have that extra home game against Houston than having to travel to Houston. So yes, it does.
If you're playing,
it matters to me for that reason alone.
If you're playing for the for a trip to the World Series, you want that home game.
Yeah, I want Game 7 in Arlington and not in Houston, where let's be real. As much as Houston is hated across this nation, they are still the darlings. They are still the World Series champs, and they have been there for the last 7, 8 years that this team has been dominating. So they're not going to just roll over.
No, and they have the pedigree of any of the teams that'll make postseason. So you can never count them out. You don't know. I mean, it's unpredictable.
I did want to make a mention of this. I had the intention of going in, win or lose, with a positive spin on the situation going on in the Bronx. I know it was kind of a shocker on a lot of levels to a lot of people that the Yankees did not make any legitimate earth-shattering moves given how tough of a year the offense has had. This is the spin I'm going with, though. When you consider that this team is only 1 year removed from the American League Championship Series, and when you consider that only the Los Angeles Dodgers have had more players miss more time than the New York Yankees, I do believe that sometimes you just have to notch up what you're doing as an aberration. I want to reiterate, I'm not absolving the Yankees' issues because of injuries. But what I will say is that I believe that given the injuries, the Yankees have never truly had an opportunity this year to fully put their feet down and fully get any kind of continuity.
You got to remember, when they were playing the Dodgers, they were actually getting on a run.
Yeah, it appeared that they were really turning the corner, and then you have the unfortunate Judge injury. And I guess what I'm getting at is, I think the message from Hal was, I still believe in some of what we have here, and I'm not just going to bust it up because everybody's freaking out.
Exactly. I think people are being very dramatic. There's definitely concerns and things to criticize, but I think they're definitely underachieving in a lot of ways.
This dude, you take a kid like Volpe, invaluable experience this particular year. Do I think a guy like McKinney or a guy like Bowers has any real future with the club? Not necessarily. I think they were by circumstance, to be honest.
They've been okay though. You picked those guys up, and they're exceeding your expectations. Honestly,
I said this to you off air. If Austin Wells and Jason Dominguez both pan out, that is a decent nucleus when you consider that Aaron Judge, and this is another thing. Harrison Bader, I would have to think, is a strong candidate to probably the Yankees allow to walk, given how injured he's.
yeah. I think they're going to let him walk. I like his defense a lot. He's elite there. He's a hard-nosed player, but I don't think his bat is ever going to be that great. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I think it is what it is. You traded a middle-tier pitcher for a middle-tier offensive player, and you kind of got what you got.
Yeah.
Montgomery, Philadelphia.
Yep. I think that they do need those two youngsters to pan out. The interesting thing will be catcher and how good is Wells, how decent enough that catcher is he to match his bat.
Well, no doubt about it, because I mean, you're missing last year's All-Star, Jose Trevino.
Yep.
Kyle Higashioka, I could kind of take him or leave him. I was kind of about Ben Rourke vet for the sheer fact that he's a lefty. He's going to finally get playing time because of the Trevino injury. But I guess ultimately what I'm saying is I think with these final 52 or so games down the stretch, this is about the Yankees just trying to see what do we have that can be retainable for next year.
That's what I said too, and I didn't think there was anything drastic to be done at the deadline. People wanted Torres gone, but I just don't think that's the right move, man.
Well, when you look at how LeMahieu has hit such a negative downturn, it would be crazy to even think about getting rid of Gleyber Torres.
Yeah. I think the biggest issue is Stanton and LeMahieu, and Stanton's getting hot right now, but Stanton and LeMahieu not being good, Rizzo going in a deep slump for reasons we know now, and then also Judge missing 2 months. Those things right there killed our lineup.
It's valid, and I'm like I said, I don't want to make excuses, and I'm not going to absolve our failures, but I will say that
you can't.
I will say this much: forget everybody you just mentioned. If Judge plays the better part of that month and a half, 2 months that he was gone, I think this is a completely different outcome this year. And I'm not saying the year's over, but I've been around the block long enough as a Yankee fan to say we are not going to the postseason this year, barring a minor miracle. I'm more worried about the immediate future.
I'm not too worried if they miss it, honestly.
I mean, dude, I'd have to be the biggest hypocrite in the world to have a shit fit when I've seen my team win 5 world championships and 3 in a lifetime.
A lot of our fans don't act like that, man. But
oh, believe me, I get frustrated too, and I have been.
So do I.
I've been very boisterous about my displeasure with Aaron Boone, but I try to be reasonable, and sometimes I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I'm not reasonable. Zappy, changing gears, I know you wanted to hit on the Pac-12 and the disintegration of it, but before we go there, I want to ask you guys a quick question. We got some time left in this season. How is this playing out? Corey mentioned Verlander as the most important add-on of these pitchers. I tend to agree with him, but I do think that Aaron Savall is going to have a big impact in Tampa, especially that they were needing for a pitcher given their injuries. How does this play out in your opinion, guys? Who's going to the American League Championship Series? Ultimately, who's going to win the American League?
You want me to take this first?
Whoever wants to have at it.
Okay, I will go first, and I think Houston is definitely going to the ALCS, and I believe Baltimore is going to surprise some people, and I think Houston will win the American League and beat the Orioles.
I'm going Rangers and Astros. Zappy made a point about needing that extra home game. I'll put it to you like this. If the Rangers have the home advantage in that particular series, I think they will win the series. Having said that, if Houston has it, I think they will win the series. I think that is a tailor-made matchup to go 7 games. It's experience versus hunger. I obviously will be rooting for Zappy's Rangers if that happens. That's my opinion.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Me
Whoever
too.
gets home field in that series, but whoever, I'm predicting that it's a happen that way regardless. Those are my two picks. It's going to be an all West ALCS. Zappy, your thoughts? Zappy, you still with us?
Can you
Zappy?
not? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh wow,
Now I can.
I was talking this whole time. All right, so the one thing to remember too when it comes to Baltimore and Houston, the only way Baltimore faces Houston in the ALCS is if Houston wins the division or if Tampa wins the division. Other than that, right now, Houston would be playing who I forgot who exactly they're playing. I think it's the Blue Jays they'd be playing against, and that winner would be going on to face Baltimore, where Texas would be facing the winner of Tampa and the other and whoever wins between the Twins. So
Gotcha.
Houston Baltimore ALCS is probably not going to happen unless
Probably not because
there's too many variables that need to take place. So because of that reason, I think Baltimore and Houston will be a very good series, but it'll be in the ALDS.
Okay.
So here I'll go back to the trade deadline. I think Texas won the trade deadline by going out and acquiring multiple pitchers. I mean, they needed to. They needed to, and going to get Max Scherzer and then Jordan Montgomery was huge for this team because, like I said, we have the number one offense in all of baseball, and now to go along with it, we have pitching. When you put those two together in a formula, that usually means great success. Most teams don't always have that. Houston's the exception where they always have hitting and pitching. So for that reason, yeah, I'm going with Houston and Texas. If Texas does hold on to this division, which I firmly believe they will, because one thing to remember, we're also getting healthy at the same time. While Houston is, so are we. We welcomed back Corey Seager yesterday, and we already saw his immediate impact. Garcia is back. Uvalde comes back in a week. So this Texas Rangers team is also getting healthy, and that's the other positive thing to look at. I mean, I can't take anything away from Houston. They've been in the World Series year in and year out. They won last year, lost to the Braves. They've been in other ones before, lost to the Nationals, so on and so forth. I can't take away from Houston. However, I got to stick with my team and say that my Rangers will be not only be playing in the ALCS, but will win Game 7 of the ALCS to advance to the World Series and no matter what, whether it's Houston or Texas, no one's beating Atlanta.
I agree. I totally agree about Atlanta. I think the home game matters more to Texas. Houston is, it's old hat for them. But I
Yeah.
think that's a coin
Nobody's
flip.
remember, guys. Nobody's supposed to beat Atlanta, but last year
Nope.
a hungry Philadelphia team knocked them out and shocked the world. And you never truly know how this is going to play out. Ask the Dodgers. The Dodgers year in and year out win over 100 games. And I alluded to how the AL West bottom feeders were a big contributor.
Yep. And I think
that paper tiger look with the Dodgers.
The Dodgers had the championship, and people criticize it. It's 2020, the Mickey Mouse championship, whatever you want to call it. But they've had a lot of disappointments too, and more than the Yankees, honestly.
The Dodgers are the only team that, in my opinion, I thought the Yankees also lost at the trade deadline, but I think the Dodgers were the team that really lost because we all know they were trying to go out there to get another pitcher. They were trying to get Scherzer. They were trying to get Verlander. They were trying to get Dylan Cease. They were trying to get everybody, and no one bit. Then the one team that did bite with the Detroit Tigers, Rodriguez said, no.
Trade clause, yeah.
Yeah, the Dodgers are one of the teams that were on his no trade clause, and he didn't want to lift it. So I think people know something about what's going on in LA. There's a reason why, because you really wanted to continue your career in Detroit. No, he just didn't want to go to LA. So there's reason behind that.
What's the reason?
Well, that's something we probably won't know. But for the Dodgers to not have been able to get a pitcher out of Detroit, the one of the worst teams in baseball over the last 15 years, probably since they won the World Series. Like they, there's got to be a strong reason.
I gotta pay homage. To my old show where I started this podcasting, the Jordan Patrick Show. You said LA had trouble nudging a trade with Detroit. We know who manages there. We know why Yankee fans hate the Houston Astros so very much and why we have such vile feelings for them. So in this moment, I would just like to say at the top of my lungs, fuck you, AJ Hinch. Keeping it in Los Angeles, before we talk about the disintegration of the Pac-12, Zappy, Corey, your thoughts on this ridiculous extension in terms of money flung towards the direction of the unibrow, Mr. Anthony Davis. Big time money, big time injuries. I get it. LeBron's on the final leg of his career. You got some young talent in Hachimura as well as Reeves, and there's not a plethora of potential future Hall of Fame big men in the NBA. He happens to be one of them. But did they overspend here, and is this silly?
I definitely think it's silly. The only saving grace, if there is any, is that it's only 3 years. But his body is failing him. It's not working out for him.
It goes back to what we were talking about with Jaylen Brown when he got that deal. These guys are going to get some ridiculous contracts. Does AD deserve $62 million per? No, I don't think so. And I'm going to tell you why. NBA season is 82 games long, and in his entire career, he has yet to play a full season. The most he's played has been 75 games in back-to-back years when he was with the Pelicans. Since joining the Lakers, even including the COVID year, he has played 36 games, 40 games, and 56 games. You mean to tell me that means he deserves a $62 million per year contract extension? Absolutely not. And the other thing is, I thought the Lakers, in order for them to win the finals this year, was going to have to go through AD and not LeBron. What happened to AD when they faced Denver? He kind of disappeared, especially when it mattered most.
Yep.
So for those reasons, I can't justify paying the guy that much money. I can't even justify giving him $50 million per.
I mean,
We're going to see it.
It's absurd, but this is the thing. Even going back to before the era of these inflated contracts, because, take into consideration that when your top NBA players in the Jordan era were making money, it was more money back then in terms of the times they were living in. Now, you take a guy like a Scottie Pippen, and one of the ridiculous things was that you had bench players that were making heftier salaries than Scottie Pippen. And one of the biggest reasons why that happened was because of the new CBA that came not long after Pippen took that ridiculously poor contract, which he was warned by multiple people within the Bulls organization that they were never going to renegotiate. But I guess what I'm trying to say is all these dudes need to pay big respect to the Charles Barkleys and the Michael Jordans. And, Patrick Ewing was a player rep for a very long time, and he's a big reason why a guy like Davis is getting what he's getting. I guess what I'm trying to say is pay homage to the pioneers.
Yes.
And be thankful for what you guys are getting, because one thing I will say is in that era of 80s and 90s basketball, your max level talents were the main guys getting paid. Now you got dudes that play 6 minutes a game that could be 3-point specialists that are making ridiculous money. And it goes to the globalization of the NBA and just how large of a brand the NBA is, not just here in the States, but globally.
It's great for the health of the sport, for sure.
No doubt about it. I mean,
and those old timers, they definitely made this possible. They were the seed that was planted because, And
I think it's like similar to what we've seen in Major League Baseball, how you have about 50% of your league is now Latino. Just like in the NBA, 50% of your league is from outside the States. Whereas in the 90s, you only had a couple of guys maybe in the league.
It speaks to a problem in baseball because I think young children in America need to be more inspired by baseball, and they're not.
I think it's still very prevalent in the heartland. And this has been something that you have guys like, say, a Curtis Granderson, who's an ambassador for the game. A good friend of the show, Sergio Rodriguez, he and I spoke on this on a previous show, where ultimately in the inner cities, it is not that easy to field a baseball team when at the end of the day, it is a little more realistic to go about playing. I mean, dude, you get a basketball. It's cheaper. There's so many variables that have to go into fielding a baseball team.
Yeah, it can be expensive, all the equipment.
You look at it at the major league level with all the different leagues. Sergio got a lot deeper than I'm going to touch on it tonight, essentially referencing that it's a father and son's game. That is another topic for another day for a deeper conversation. But I do want to let Zappy hit on the disintegration of the Pac-12 and what this means for the future of college football and other conferences like it.
Well, I mean, I don't even know if disintegration is the right word. It's just mind-blowing what is going on right now with the Pac-12. And, a lot of it has to do with the TV deal that is happening right now. But this is a conference that, I mean, we saw UCLA and USC, they're gone. And now after today, Arizona State, Utah, they're off to the Big 10. I'm sorry, the Big 12. And then Washington and Oregon, they're off to the Big 10. All they have left right now is Stanford, Cal, Washington State, and who's the other team left that they have? Oregon State. I tend to think that Oregon State and Washington State are going to be following in the same footsteps and going off to the Big 10. What does this mean for college football? Well, it means that everyone is trying to catch up to the SEC. Both the Big 12 and the Big 10 have gotten a lot stronger. We're seeing that the SEC is the premier conference in all of college football. It's been that way for the last 14 years or so. I mean, we look at USC was running this nation in the early 2000s. Then they met Texas in 2005 and lost in that title game. And after that, it was kind of we saw Florida win for a couple. Then we saw
the Urban Meyer era.
Yeah, and that's kind of when it started with the SEC. Yep. And since then, we've constantly been seeing LSU, Alabama, Georgia, that is just winning year in and year out, with Ohio State winning one championship here and Clemson winning here in Florida State.
Speaking of the Georgia Bulldogs, they are looking at a potential three-peat this year.
Yeah, and I mean their recruiting has been second to none, really, if you really look at Georgia. The Pac-12 is done. These remaining teams, I think Stanford will go independent for a little while, and Cal will probably do the same, or they go join the Mountain West. But this college football is going to turn into pretty much a 4 or 5 conference football thing, where it's going to be the SEC, the Big 10, and the Big 12, and one other, which it's going to have to be the Mountain West combining with the Pac-12, and they're going to have to get other teams in there. But quite frankly, the SEC has been the class. Big 10 and Big 12 have been right there this whole time. ACC is going to fall apart. They're going to lose Florida State. Clemson's going to jump ship and probably go to the SEC as well. So, it's just college football is not going to be what college football once was.
Let me ask you, being an Irish fan as myself, and you are, do you think we will ever see the day?
I can't hear you.
Do you think we'll ever see the day that Notre Dame no longer is an independent program and eventually joins a conference like they have in basketball?
They have to. They have to because of recruiting.
It's getting to a point where, I mean, dude, to put it in perspective, and don't get me wrong, still a very proud university, but you're talking 1987, if I'm not mistaken, when they beat the Miami Hurricanes?
It's been a while, but here's the thing to look at. Year in and year out, this team plays USC, Stanford, 2 Pac-12 teams.
Right.
That's going to go away. Year in, year out, they usually playing Purdue, Michigan, 2 Big 10 teams. It's quite simple.
And
They
you can
joined
throw
the
Michigan State in there too.
Well, they haven't played Michigan State in a while, but it was year and you would watch them play Michigan every year. They need to either join the ACC or the Big Ten. I think they need to join the Big Ten if they want opportunities to improve on their recruiting, which they still have a top 5 recruiting team in the nation. But as we see all this conference realignment going on, Notre Dame, I mean, they have not been so lucky when it comes to a November 1st game. I'm sorry, a January 1st game, or in bowl games in general. They don't win. And when they've been playing against top 5 teams, they don't win. So as much as I love to see Notre Dame win all these games, when it matters most, they haven't done it. They haven't done it for over a quarter of a century.
And to be fair, to your earlier point, they have company because the SEC has literally been a next level standard for what it's supposed to look like all around the board. Because we saw it last year with TCU, Cinderella season. They knocked off Michigan, and then we all saw what happened to them in the championship game. And I remember the show we did. They have nothing to be ashamed of, but it just goes to show you the kind of next level that the SEC truly is on. I mean, it is really impressive. And no, I'm going to make this clear. I understand the SEC is on a different level, but no, they can't beat pro teams, guys. I still don't buy that shit.
They cannot.
No, there's.
Nope.
I
don't care how bad a pro team is. They still can't do that.
These because a pro team has grown men. These colleges, yeah, you could be Alabama or Georgia and be 14-0 and haven't lost in 3 years or whatever. Fact of the matter is, these are still kids. They haven't come completely into their body's growth.
These are
NFL players. Yeah, no, that's never going to happen.
Over the years and small sample sizes, these kind of things happen, whether it be the miracle on ice, if you take it back to when the United States beat Russia, or if you talk even about something that's not even all that publicized, but when a young Michael Jordan coming out of college, his collegiate team in a exhibition defeated a team featuring Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. So these things have happened. They just don't happen very often.
No.
Yeah.
Anything you guys want to hit on before we get out of here? We are coming up on the 7.5 minute mark, a little approaching about 8 minutes left.
I wanted to expand more on the Domingo Herman situation.
Oh, go have at it. I'd love to hear about this.
I wanted to get your take on, it's a tricky situation, obviously. What do you think? Do you demonize him? Do you say, what a jerk, how could he do that? Or are you surprised? Did you see something like this happening or what?
I don't think you demonize anybody for anything because life is hard and people make mistakes. And some people take the long road to get where they're going, and you hope that they finally get to where they're supposed to be. But I will say this. If you want to compare it to CC Sabathia, coming forward to his organization and telling them he had a problem, we've seen the kind of life that CC lives, and he has more than overcame that bump in his life. But when I look at a Domingo Herman, it's deeper than an alcoholism thing.
Right.
This is an organization that not too long ago dealt with a domestic violence situation. And then you factor in if that was also related,
right,
not being able to control the alcohol. Once again, I'm going to absolve him or use alcohol as an excuse.
You can't absolve him, and then it's almost like, okay, he had a domestic situation, and then, time goes on, and you kind of just say, okay, he's all right now. I'm not condoning it, and maybe he was there all along, and he just had no way of knowing.
And I hope that he gets past his demons and continues to have a hell of a baseball career. But in my opinion, the reason why he will not be a New York Yankee in the near future is because this is a second strike with them. Very rarely have the New York Yankees bent backwards for guys that have been in these situations, or more so in an era where it's more out in the open, because we all know that Mickey Mantle used to bend the elbow, and his teammates at many times had to take care of him. But the difference is that Mickey Mantle, no matter what the hell was going on, always was at the ballpark and ready to rev it up.
Can you imagine?
I don't think his behavior either, because
I don't even think he could have existed today.
Oh no, I mean the Mick, to his credit, came clean about a lot of his regrets in life about not being the best father nor husband.
Right.
And I think it takes a man to own their mistakes. As far as Domingo Germán goes, he has to worry about getting his heart, mind right, and only then can he move on. And repairing the image comes in time, because let me tell you something. When you have a blemish on your record, it doesn't matter what year it is. Even if you have turned it around, you will always have those haters that will always be judgmental. I mean, dude, look at Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. An accusation, which probably had about as much merit as the one that they tried to get Tupac on, literally changed the trajectory of how many MVPs he would win, how many sponsorships he would get. Towards his final seasons, it seemed like he was more embraced, and people were really like, wow, this guy's a treasure. And I think people finally saw through the bullshit that this guy was a hell of a person. But, more times than not, I think that's how it has to be. More than one strike. I mean, you look at the trajectory and the history of the Yankees, only person that comes to mind that they truly bent over backwards for in a manner like that was Darryl Strawberry.
Right.
And as the late George Steinbrenner phrased it, this is a sickness, is the way that George, he didn't view it as Darryl being irresponsible or Darryl not caring about the team. He viewed it legitimately as a sickness, and also Darryl also fought cancer as a member of the Yankees. George Steinbrenner very much so interceded not only his issues, but also Doc Gooden. Zappy, I'm going to shut up now. I'm kind of going on a rant, but what are your thoughts on this Domingo Germán situation?
I mean, I'm not going to really say much about it. The guy's got a problem. He needs to address it, and he's doing that. So I'll leave it at that. We all have our demons.
Absolutely.
I think it's bigger than baseball. I hope mentally he's not affected to the point where he can't live his life in the way that he needs to. Because in baseball, whatever, he's privileged to play baseball, but he has a family. Is this guy okay mentally? Is he right? That's what you worry about.
Yeah, and you know what? This ties into actually what I sent Richie earlier today with Johnny Football. How in his documentary, we're finding out that after he was cut by the Browns, he actually attempted suicide. I never knew that.
Yeah.
And
you sent me that, but
sports is not. I mean, sports. Don't get me wrong. In my life, I love sports. I love football, baseball, basketball, hockey, golf, tennis, everything. I'm always going to be tuned into something. But is sports above everything else? Absolutely not. Number one priority in a person's life is themselves. That's it. You always have to take care of yourself first, because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your family, your friends, all the other things that matter, So absolutely, I think it's very important that he gets this done. If he never throws another pitch again in his life,
so be it.
So be it, yes, because I guarantee there are people out there that would much rather see him every day than remember him as the guy that threw a complete game in 2023 and then something bad happens, no.
I mean,
sports is never above anyone.
No, he's like he's a 30-year-old man.
He's young. He still has a long way to go.
We got 1 minute left. I like both your takes, very honest, shooting from the hip. On a lighter note, more on the entertainment level, tomorrow the WWE celebrates SummerSlam, one of my favorite events. Yes. I'm in and out with wrestling, but I always do tune in for this one. We have a dual main event. Corey, I know you mess with wrestling to a level. Do you like Brock Lesnar tomorrow, or are you going with the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes?
I'm going Cody.
And how about main event, Jey Uso against his cousin Roman Reigns? That family must be so proud of the success they've had. Who you like in that main event?
Oh man, see they've almost been trying to pull a bait and switch on us with that because Roman has actually lost a couple of times lately.
Yeah, they try to wash it away. I'm going Roman for the win.
I
For the
agree.
panel, we are out. Please
Nate Diaz for the win tomorrow.
Rich, say what?
Nate Diaz wins tomorrow.
We shall see.
Hey man.
Nestor Cortez for the W tomorrow. Have a good night, everybody.